Hello, everyone, and welcome to Versatile Training Academy. This is our mini course looking at warm-ups, mainly before lifts, but this course can also be taken into context with any kind of field or conditioning work you might be doing with your teams or clients. For our table of contents, we're going to start off looking at some theoretical concepts of warm-ups, some practical concepts of warm-ups, how we might individualize between a team and an individual session. We're going to look at Ramp's method. We're going to look at other methods. We're going to look at a movement circuit, which has kind of been a newer style, not new in sense of like creation, but just new in terms of us working it with our teams and athletes here at Versatile Training Academy. And then finally, finishing up with kind of giving you an overview of how we set up and how we structure our warm-ups here. So theoretical concepts of warm-ups. What does a warm-up do? I think that's got to be one of our first understandings of like, why are we even doing this? Why are we wasting our time? First off, with our warm-ups, we want to increase core and muscle temperature. We want to get the muscle more pliable. We want to get that internal core temperature a little bit higher than it is, get that body sweating. I always like to think that if my clients or athletes have a little bit of a glaze, a sweat on their forehead, the warm-up has done its job. Second is to prep the athlete or client for lift or competition. And then finally, a proper warm-up improves athleticism. I think this is an important piece that a lot of people leave out, is that during a warm-up, it's a great time to incorporate some low-level plyometrics, some low-level movements that might not be typically seen in the weight room, or if you're in a commercial style gym, maybe you don't have true access to some turf area, some sleds, plyo boxes. We can still get some athleticism to our clients and athletes through the warm-up. And also, it's a good way to keep the warm-up fun and doing things that our clients or athletes might not normally be doing. If we're working in an athletic population, we're working in a team setting, improving athleticism, I mean, that's the goal, right? Like, yeah, we want to get them stronger, we want to get them faster, but if they're not being able to translate that into their sport, not becoming more athletic in their sport, really, I think we're just wasting our time. Types of warm-ups. We have passive, and then we have active. So passive warm-ups, we're thinking about going in the hot tub, going in the sauna. Maybe if it's the winter time, if you've ever heard this, I think it was a meme somewhere I heard it. It was like, but I came in with the car seats, the heated car seats on. Yeah, you might be actually warmer, but it's not the same as going through a proper warm-up, going through some kind of dynamic stretching, going through some kind of movement-based mobilization work, and getting that CNS going. When we're looking at our active warm-ups, this is what we typically think of when we're thinking of warm-ups. We're actively going through ranges of motion. We're actively going through movements. We might be even doing some mimicking of, some specific movements that we plan on training that day. And generally, in your warm-ups, you should start very general and move to specific. That could be within the session itself, or that can be as you're building on top of each week or each phase of the warm-up. I think one important part of warm-ups is remember who you are training. And I give this example. My freshmen that come in with some of the teams that I train, the warm-up is going to crush them. They're sweating, they're breathing heavy, like they're like, oh my God, that was just the warm-up. The idea is not to just shock them, but to understand that as you're training, the warm-up might be carrying over more into training than you think it is, or you might need to scale back your warm-up. Understanding that everyone has different levels of fitness, different levels of experience, so you should try to resemble that as you do in your workouts. And you're not going to give someone day one 9 sets of 2 back squat at an extremely high intensity. No, you're going to work them up into it. It might just be goblet squatting with a dumbbell or bodyweight squatting. Same thing with our warm-up. Let's kind of bring it back to where they need, not where you want them to be. Practical warm-up, I'm going to kind of really base this around the team setting, but I'll throw in examples of how this works with working with individuals at the same time. Know what you are trying to do. I think this is a big piece of training, is what is the goal for either that training session, that week of training? What phase are you in, right? What is the big macro of maybe that 4 weeks, 3 weeks of training that you're trying to get done? That warm-up not necessarily needs to exactly replicate that, but it should have some correlation to what you're doing. If we're doing some explosive work, lower body strength, and everything I'm doing upper body is just some arm swings, cross bodies, and push-ups, that's really not giving our clients or athletes what they need to be successful, to prep them for the work of the day. Know your environment. What gym are you in? What equipment do you have? What's the number of people you're training? I think a big one also is, what is the caliber of the athletes or client you're working with. Is this a complete newbie who's never stepped foot inside a gym or a weight room before? Or are you dealing with an Division I, maybe even Olympic level athlete who's training with you in the summertime? That's going to dictate what you do for your warm-up. Also, flow. I think this is one that's highly not thought about as much. I know that the warm-up and some movement preps I do with my teams now are way different than what I did at my previous university I worked at, mainly just because of the size and the layout of the room. I have some more space. It's kind of set up to mimic both sides of the room, so they're kind of mirrored off each other, so I can lay out things much betterly than I previously could. Like training, warm-ups need to be periodized. I think this is one thing that can set you apart as a trainer, as a coach, as anyone who's offering their clients or athletes some kind of service in the realm of fitness or strength and conditioning. If your warm-up in a 12-week phase is the exact same from day 1 as it is to week 12, day 3, you are doing them a disservice. Just like training, you're going to increase intensity, you're going to decrease volume, you might go from a simple movement to a more complex movement. You're going to progress and regress that athlete client as sees fit. Same should be done with your warm-ups. What they did on day 1 versus the last day, if it's the same, they're not going to be getting the same stimulus, they're not going to be getting the same effect in it, and if nothing else, they're just going to be bored of knowing to come in and doing the exact same warm-up every single day. As we'll see later in this course, that doesn't mean every day needs to be 100% new and 100% new exercises. We can keep things the same because we want to build on it, right? We want to create mastery not only in our movements but also in our warm-ups. Warm-ups are movements, just lower scaled. Creating mastery through that is important, but I think also giving some variation in that to keep the excitement going will not only keep your athletes or clients more engaged, but it will also help them progress faster, because a lot of that time, if we're doing split squats in a movement prep, and we might have split squats in the workout, well, that might have been 25 reps prior that they're getting better in. That's 20 more reps over the course of, say, 3 weeks. That's a lot of extra reps getting in there. And this flows in nicely to the last part. Warm-ups set the tone. I don't know how many times I've seen it where I've kind of put together a not so great warm-up, either for myself or for my teams or the clients I work with, versus when I really put some thought into it, it's planned out ahead of time, it flows well into the workout. It really does set that tone of now everyone's ready to go. CNSs are lit up a little bit more, everyone's warm, everyone's feeling ready to go. It really can set that tone versus if it's kind of nonchalant, hey, go 5 minutes on the treadmill, now we're getting into our sets. It might take a few sets besides the warm-up sets into those working sets before your athlete or client is really feeling good, really moving in the way that they want to. Team versus individual warm-up. So with this slide, I think these are some 3 big important rocks when you're looking at team or individual is goals. In a team setting, we're looking at probably what is that workout for the day. How do we maybe give 1 or 2 kids maybe some individualization if they need it, versus if it's an individual warm-up, I can truly focus on those goals. My client has poor dorsiflexion and overhead capacity. Well, I can really now take that time in the warm-up to work in those problem areas, which is going to set them up better for the lift and workouts ahead. Time. It is going to take way less time to get an individual through a warm-up than it is through a team. You've got some people who are moving faster, you got some people who are moving slower, you got some people who, let's be honest, might be skipping a couple reps. If it's saying, hey, we're doing 10 glute bridges, they might be doing 6 and then just waiting for the next movement. Individually, you can work through that, you can work with them, and definitely take maybe a 12-minute warm-up that a team setting could get done, and get it done maybe in 6 or 7 minutes with an individual. And also focus. You can give way more attention to one person than you can 40. It's just simple math. So now working with that individual, you can really focus on making sure they're going through the right range of motion, they're doing it with the right intent that's supposed to be done to get the most out of this warm-up. So getting into a little bit more specific, we're going to look at the RAMPS method here. RAMPS is an acronym for kind of how I think of structuring warm-ups. Definitely stole this method and kind of how I break it down. Slightly have added one piece that I think most people don't do. But the first one, R, we're looking at rise. Like we talked about earlier, we're trying to increase that body temperature. We're trying to get sweaty. This can be done through active movement, a dynamic stretch, some kind of movement that is low intensity to get the body going, so that way we're not going right out and running sprints, right? It might be a couple jogs around our field. It could be 6 to 7 dynamic movements, really just trying to get this body moving, get a little sweat going. Second, we're looking at activation. We're looking at what key muscles will be used in that session. So in the weight room, that might be using mini bands to activate our glutes, some iso holds, or muscle-specific exercises that are going to be focused on that main movement. Good one here could be, hey, if we're doing a pushing movement today, a horizontal push, maybe we're starting off with some push-ups, maybe a push-up to a downward dog, so now we're also getting the shoulders involved too. M stands for mobilize. We're looking to prep the range of motion of the joints for that session. Also looking at possibly trying to increase that range of motion in problem areas. So lower body squat day, I'm probably looking at increase in dorsiflexion of the ankles, and also looking at hip flexion at the same time. How do we increase these areas that are going to impact that squatting session and also help to put our clients or athletes in a better position? P is potentiate. We're looking at increasing that central nervous system for performance, right? We want to make sure that we are ready to go. We are firing on all 4 cylinders. We're not still feeling sluggish. We're not feeling tired. We are ready to hit this workout full throttle. And finally, S, I like to use it as specialized. Final piece of the warm-up for prepping for the main movement. So this might be after we're done our potentiation, we grab an empty barbell and we go through our barbell warm-up for our hang clean, which is basically just breaking down the hang clean into smaller movements and then building up till we're performing a couple reps of an empty barbell for a hang clean. I like the idea of this last piece because I want everything to flow through the workout seamlessly. I don't want it to be like warm-up, abrupt stop, workout starts. I want everything to kind of flow together. There's really no end or beginning from the end of the workout to the end of the warm-up, to the beginning of the workout. So here we're looking at kind of another macro, another 30,000 view of possibly what a warm-up could look like. I like this quote of optimizing performance by reducing the risk of injury during sport and competition. The idea of the warm-up is to prepare the body, right? We're not going out and going to have a track athlete do a 100-meter dash, not do anything sitting down, and then all of a sudden get in the blocks and going. The possibility that risk of injury is going to be extremely high. Also, the performance is not going to be where it needs to be. So getting the body warm, getting the body moving as it should is going to help reduce the likelihood of injury and, again, help us be able to perform at our high level. One thing I like to use is the word, and you've probably heard me say it already, is I like to kind of, when I'm working with my teams, my athletes, is call it a movement prep over a warm-up. And to me, this is quite simply that just words matter. If I say a warm-up, some people are going to have it in their head of just going through the motions, doing some stretching, being on a treadmill or a bike for a couple minutes, versus if I say, hey, we're doing a movement prep, to them, the way I explain it, the way we teach it, is to understand that everything has a certain purpose and is done at a certain intent to make sure that we can maximize this training session. And I like to break it down with some general movements. We'll always do some kind of hip or glute activation for the day. Some kind of dynamic stretch will will include some movement integration, and then finally have that neural activation to get that CNS going. One way that I've seen and I've done in the past that makes warm-ups a little bit more fun, especially if you're on the court or you're doing some kind of field work with your athletes, but even if you're just truly only in the gym with your clients, is changing up the warm-up and adding in a linear day versus a lateral day. I think kind of adding, just not always going in a straight line, going side to side, 45-degree angles, whether that might just be in our movement integration, doing some plyos, doing some 45-degree jumps, bounds, just getting the people moving in different directions and not just always thinking in this like front, forward, and back motion. Finally, the last thing when we're looking at warm-ups, and I think I've discussed this already, again, I want to harp on this a little bit more. Progress your warm-ups like you do training. There should be a theme, whether that you're adding a little bit more exercises after maybe, say, phase 1 of training, they've done 4 weeks, you've had a little variation day to day on what you're doing. Phase 2, maybe now you're adding a whole nother layer. You're adding 2 more exercises per area, that movement prep. So now it's increasing. Instead of doing 1 glute activation, you're doing 2 glute activations. You're trying to keep pushing that throttle to keep that needle moving forward. Circuit style warm-ups is something that I've been playing around with an individual client that I'm working with now. I really like it for one of the main reasons we'll talk towards the end. But for this, we have 3 to 4 exercises. We'll go 2 to 3 rounds per. We can either keep the movements the same, so they'll just do these 4 movements 3 times through, or we might change it where every round is a different set of movements. We'll try to start off slow to move fast, and we'll go simple to complex, and that can be done over the course of the day or over the course of our training as they get more accustomed to the warm-up, trying to make it more complex. And I kind of use this TASP acronym to kind of help me think about my warm-up. So the first thing I want to include is some kind of core or trunk work, which is going to be anti-extension, anti-lateral flexion, or anti-rotation. Then we'll move into our activation for the major movements or weaknesses. So lower body day, we might be doing some glute bridges. We might be doing some mini band work. We're doing something to kind of get that hips and glutes moving and firing in the way we want it to. Secondly, we're looking at our specific movement. So this prep is going to be the movement of the day. So if we're doing hang cleans, we might be going outside and throwing a light med ball up overhead, getting that triple extension, getting in that good hinge position, and making sure that we're learning how to drive through the ground the same way we would on our hang cleans. Finally, we're going to look at the posterior chain for the intent of training that day. So if it's an upper body day, we're focusing on some posterior chain of the upper body. Lower body day for the lower. If it's a total body day, we might be doing a little bit of upper and lower mixed in with that. Just again, trying to get more posterior chain work in, since a lot of the athletes and people I work with are already anteriorly overdeveloped. It's going to allow us to get more of that posterior chain work in. One of the main reasons that I really like the circle style warm-up is it gives the athletes autonomy. What that means is if I've been working with someone for a while and they understand, hey, that's core, activation for major movement, prep movement, and then posterior chain, I can say, hey, look, here's the categories. You fill in the blank with what you want to do. They already know the workout for the day. They might know their limitations already. Let them kind of choose the exercises based on the categories we're looking to get. It's a great way to have them feel like they have some say in the workout. And when someone has say in something, it's not just always being told to them, but they're now also given some, again, autonomy, some control of it. They're definitely going to put more into it than just me always giving them the warm-up. So Versatile Training Academy warm-up, first thing I always think about is what is the situation? What are we trying to do? Who is it? What is the goal? I try to keep my warm-ups anywhere between 8 and 15 minutes. 15 minutes might seem a little bit long, but if you think about it, if it's a first-time client or a freshman group, first time working with them, I need to teach them. They might came from a school or worked with a personal trainer and have some kind of base knowledge, but at the same time, you might call something A, I call something B. It's the same movement. We just learn different nomenclature for it. So I need to make sure they understand how to do it, how I expect them to do it, and what we're looking to get out of them. Second, time of training. Do I have a football group in early January at 6 a.m.? They're coming in the lift. It's snowing. It's cold. They've just woken up 5 minutes before and came to the weight room. The warm-up we're going to do is going to be way different than my 2:30 men's lacrosse group. Already been to class, has had 2 meals in them. Some of them might already had an individual session or just got on the field and shot around. Their bodies is more awake. They're more alert than what my 6 a.m. football group was. Team and athlete. I don't think there's anything wrong to say that if you have a lower training age athlete or team, that your warm-up shouldn't reflect that. More teaching, more understanding, more basic movement patterns, that's going to put them in the better position. And also, what's the lift of the day? If I have just making up a random warm-up that's not going to get them ready to lift, I'm just wasting that 8 to 15 minutes of time throughout the day. Big piece that I think a lot of people overlook is have fun. Like, let's have fun during the warm-ups, whether that be a little bit of a competition at the end, a game, anything that really makes it fun. Like, training is hard. Training is monotonous. Training is not always the best part of your day, even though I try to make sure my clients and athletes, it's the best hour of their day. Why not have fun with the warm-up instead of it just being so regimented and so focused and so like can't mess up, can't have a good time? I like to joke around during my warm-ups. I like to have people laughing. It's a great time to kind of have some baseline conversation, get to know your client a little bit better on a personal level or the team as a whole. Great warm-ups lead to great lifts. I don't care what anyone says. I will stand behind this because I know from personal experience, if I choose to have a not-so-great warm-up or if I just don't have time and I'm going right into my lift, it's never the same as if I just take that 8 minutes, have a good structured warm-up that gets my body going for the lift. Here we have an example of kind of how I write out our weight room warm-ups. I kind of look at that thermal piece. What are we trying to rise? Mobility, activation, and prime are kind of the 4 words I use to do it. So for this day, we're going to start off with jumping jacks for 20 seconds, cross jacks for 20 seconds, high knees for 20 seconds, butt kicks for 20 seconds. General movement, getting the body going, getting the blood flowing, hopefully breaking a sweat when we're done. We're going to move into our mobility. We're looking at some shoulder cars, cat-cows for some spine health, T-spine rotations, ankle rocks, and neck cars. Looking at some major issues, whether that be shoulders, thoracic area, and ankles. Finally, we're moving into our activation with some front planks, bird dog holds, and split squat holds. And then for our prime for the day, we got a 2-inch run, really high intensity, short time, only 8 seconds, all-out effort, really getting that body and that CNS going. Example number 2, we see how the day changes. Still, everything is kind of in that format. As we go through, mobility changes slightly. This is also in our first phase, so what you'll see is a lot of consistency with some variation, right? We're teaching at this time. We're trying to set a good example of what each movement should be done. So just like in training where we might have 3 total body days for a new client or a new team, so that way we're drilling more repetition in. Same thing with our warm-ups, but still giving a little bit of variety so that way things aren't becoming stale. And this is our day 3. Again, everything stays the same. Intent, way we do things, just that exercise is going to change slightly to represent what we're doing for that day. And also trying to keep some things the same so that way we can keep getting better at the movements. Final thoughts here for this little mini course, which I hope you guys liked. I was hoping to make it a little bit shorter, but it's fine. Progress your warm-ups just like training. Use a screen with a test and retest. I think a warm-up is also a great time to screen and test your athletes, especially if you're working one-on-one with a client. If we're doing a couple bodyweight squats in the beginning for a warm-up, day 1, day 3, we can kind of see, all right, day 1, we need to elevate the heels a little bit. By week 3, we're seeing that they're able to hit depth a little bit better. Allow it to be a way to kind of test basic movements and see that if training and what they've been doing is getting them better. Warm-up is part of training. I don't think there should be a separation between warm-up and training. They should bleed together seamlessly and have an absolute purpose for what we're doing for the day. And then finally, have a goal in mind. Whatever you're doing for your warm-ups, for your teams and athletes, make sure there is a goal, whether that's for that day, for that week, for that month. It should be thought out just like you do your training sessions in helping that team, an athlete, or client reach their goals. Everyone, thank you so much for watching this mini course. Hopefully you guys got something out of it, some value in it. Feel free to leave me comments down below on what you liked, what you didn't like. What can I make better in this? If there's any kind of topic you would like us to research and dive into more here at Versatile Training Academy, feel free. Again, thank you guys so much and have a great one.